I compared this on my chart of all the necks I have on the wall, and I'm just past stage 2. So I'm at stage 3, which is where I start using the drum sander. Now everybody's going to need this at some point, so make sure you have other things to do if there's a line to use this. But again, the bigger the spindle, the better it sands, because the bigger it is, the more passes in the same amount of time, so it sands a little bit faster. So I'm going to go to the next size up. Just remove that, and I hold it at the bottom with my hand. If I can't just undo it by hand, there's a wrench right here, and I showed that earlier in another video. Pop it out, and grab the next size up. This one is ideal for doing that neck. Just hand tighten it, and in this case, the same throat plate is for both of them. Turn it on, and just what I'm going to do here is, it's very boxy right here, lots of sharp corners. I need to round this quite a bit so it tapers and flares. I need to sand all this out a little so it's nice and smooth, so that will now keep its nice shape. But this needs to be perfectly rounded, and this needs to flare outwards as it gets wider. So there's a lot of sanding, and you'll just feel with your fingers as you go. Now for this neck, I don't really use this to sand directly. I have other sandpaper for that, which I'll show you in a few minutes. But first, let's try to knock off these sharp corners here and here. Again, I'm being very careful not to hit the edge. So it'll flare down to it, but don't make it smaller. All right, I know the video doesn't make it easy to see, but now it's more rounded and flares a little bit better. Just continue to smooth that out a little bit. All right, when you're done, it should be more round. It's not going to be perfect, of course, and this should be nice and smooth. Now, I did hit here a little just to get rid of the bandsaw, but the sides, I'm going to do more by hand. But I tried to match the flare to the edges that I couldn't hit with the draw knives, and I did hit here because this was a little torn out. But again, my pencil lines are still there, all the way there and all the way along there. So I have not hit the sides. Be very careful there. So I took it back to the table, and again, I clamped it down with a headstock on the table, nice and tight. Now I have a bin full of sandpaper, some wide, some medium, some small. So I usually grab just the wide and small, but whatever works for you. For the straight area, where it's actually straight, not where it starts to curve, I want to use the wide stuff. Okay, the wide stuff works great. We're just going to hold it like this and go back and forth, just like that. That's going to make this nice and straight and round, so I get rid of all these weird marks that the draw knife left. Again, make sure, do not sand like that, where I've wrapped it around. That will hit my side. Okay, and a lot of people make that mistake. They get a little too excited about it, and their hands are too close, and then they narrow out their neck. So again, keep looking at the sides and make sure that pencil's still there. If it disappears for a moment, stop sanding that way, put the pencil back on and keep going and make sure it stays. Now, the reason I mentioned don't sand here with this is because as I go uphill, it doesn't touch anywhere but on the edge here and the edge here, and that'll dig in a lot on the edge. So we need something smaller, and that's where this comes in. So I wouldn't use it here because it's so narrow. It's too easy to tilt, and you got the same problem. But here, where it's small enough, it does a really good job on this transition. But I have to keep moving it. Make sure not to stay in one spot. You still have the same problem, but it's much less with this small one. So this is the time where for your arms to get another workout, and you just start sanding away. When I get a little ways through, I put a pencil right on the top. That tells me when I hit the top that I've got a nice round all the way around. As you look down, right here, it narrows down. So if I look at the side, he didn't hit here at all, but it's very sharp. So as you look, if you can tell quick, right here is where it dips in and then it gets a little bit wider. If this is too narrow, the neck doesn't match up with the fretboard and they don't glue on. All right, good. So it's nice and round. I still haven't hit the sides though, I was very close. So you can get close. Close is okay, but I still have some rough there. That's what I want. Now I still have a little bit of pencil here, that's okay, but mostly I'm gonna start doing this round now, like this. So here's a neck that one of my students has done, and I wanted to show, in this case, it's the end. I know it's hard to see, let me see if I can point at the camera, but right here, it actually gets a little bit sharper at the end. And this is where it needs to be the widest, is right where this connects to the body. So we cannot hit the sides here. And then continue using that, and then feel the sides. So you want to be able to feel that it's even. If I go like this and feel any bad bumps, then I know I've got to sand a little bit more. It's not too bad. So keep going until your finger is telling you that it's good. Then bring it to me and we'll take a look. The time has come to use a piece of sandpaper and your hand. I'm going to show you a trick that I learned in high school from my shop teacher. Shout out to Terry O'Neill in Freeport, Illinois. Fold it in half, put it on a sharp edge, cut it, fold it in half again, and cut. So you have a quarter sheet. It's a lot easier to hold. Now, fold, and then open and fold it again into fourths. So what we don't want to bend it and flat on flat, because that's hard. It moves, it's slippery, it's too slippery. We certainly don't want grit on grit, because that just wears itself out. So we have this quarter sheet, put it in the middle and tear halfway. So now we have it like that. Now you're gonna fold down, across, and over. Now all of the grit is against the smooth side, so it won't wear itself out. And it's a good size for my hand, and no matter how I sand, I'm holding on to grit and I'm using grit on the other side. And here we go again. Now we want to start sanding with the grain. It's hard to tell on the camera, but there's a lot of scratches sideways. We want to go with the grain to get rid of those. And this is the part that's going to take a while. Here on the end grain, it doesn't really matter if I go this way or this way, it's end grain. On the side, it does matter, so I want to go this way. But when I get over here, I can go this way or I can go up and down. They'll both work. And this is 100 grit. This is fairly rough stuff. So we're going to use the rough stuff and then continue to get smoother and smoother as we go. Now we're back at the sander, and while this is feeling pretty good and smooth, right here the transition up into the headstock, it's a little rough. I mean, it's still bumpy. I could do it by hand, but I want to lightly sand here to get the transition looking good, and then I'll go at it by hand from there. But be careful, you do not want to take this round over transition onto the sides at all. So be careful to stop where that curve stops. Don't go any higher than the end there. So I got that transition looking a little better. It still needs some hand sanding, which I'll get to in a second. But essentially turn around, and we're at this sander right here. I want to sand this face. Now this one was cut on the saw and actually is pretty nice and flat. We're going to cover this anyway. Don't sand the top where the marks are for the holes. The underside is pretty bad. It's bandsawn, so we want to get that flat. So the easiest way, unscrew this and lay that open, and we're just going to push it right here on the side. Now be very careful. If I go too low, it starts to sand into my neck and you get a weird divot. So you just want to go enough so it sands this flat without hitting this area right here. So turn it on and take your time. You see that I'm going back and forth a little bit. I'm not pushing very hard. You just keep going until all the bandsaw marks disappear. You can still see a few more there. A little more. There we go. So, it's hard to see, but as you can see, I went just down into my neck just a touch. And even I went a hair too far. But I can transition that because it wasn't very much. But be careful. If I had kept going any further, it would have been a real problem. So now I have to go back and sand and make sure all of this transitions smoothly into the rest of the head, from the neck to the head. While you're here, let's go ahead and just sand this part just a touch. Now it isn't flat. You're going to have to tilt just a little. There we go. All right, now we're working on this transition, and I actually think I might have to go back to this stuff, and I know it's the small stuff, but I'm going to be careful. I'm not going up and down the entire arm, the entire thing here, so it won't make a lot of divots. There. That's a lot better. So now it's much less noticeable as it transitions and flares up. And I stopped my transition at the ends where I wanted. Now I'm back to my 100 grit and go for it with your arm. Now we move up to 120 grit and do exactly the same thing. The 100 grit, this stuff, should have taken out the bad marks going across the grain. Now we have to take out the marks that the 100 grit left. This usually speeds up the process. It goes faster as you go up in grit. Now I'm not going to go any higher than this for now. Eventually I'll hit it with 220, but that's after everything else on this neck is done.